Thank you for the opportunity. At the request of the board, we've made Marie Van Nostrand from Luminosity available. As you're certainly aware, Marie has really charted the course for our jail population and justice system assessment implementation project, a jail population analysis, and she's here to speak to that process and probably be a little bit more detailed than I've been able to do in your inquiries now and again. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Marie for the PowerPoint presentation. I'm sure she'll be able to answer any questions you might have, Alicia.
Thank you. Good evening. We conducted a system assessment in the summer and fall of 2011. I had the opportunity to be in front of the board in December of 2011. And so what I wanted to do was actually review with you some of the information we presented then and then tell you what has happened since. The rated capacity of the jail as far as how it can operate is about 800. In 2010, there was over 1,000 inmates being held in the jail on any given day, even though pretty significant amounts of money were being spent to house inmates out. There were still over 900 inmates in the jail on any given day, which is really still considered crowded. And as you know, there was significant need for renovation, which was going to require closing of a housing pod, which would just further increase the crowding. So we conducted the assessment with the hopes of identifying opportunities really to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the way cases are processed and impact the jail population. The goal was to make recommendations to all of you and to the county of how we could responsibly reduce the jail population without compromising public safety or the integrity of the judicial process. Again, I did a presentation to the board in December of 2011, and at that time presented what we considered to be 10 significant opportunities to responsibly reduce the population. This is actually an identical slide from the December 2011 presentation, and where I said that jail crowding in Union County is a solvable problem, which is a pretty bold statement that I made at the time. But it was based on the number of people who come into the facility and our observations that it was really how long they stay seemed extraordinarily high for what we would expect to see, and that the greatest opportunity to reduce the population would be to improve the efficiency of which inmates are processed through the criminal justice system. And this chart that we showed at the time shows the length of stay and the commitments. And if you see on this chart, what we said was in 2010 there were over 1,000 inmates in the jail on any given day. And if the average length of stay was reduced to 46 days from 55 days, that there would only have been 853 inmates in the jail. So that is the example that I gave, that if we could effectively reduce the length of stay, we could reduce the population to 853. And again, what we stated at the time was that an average daily population of 853 was achievable for Union County, and it would eliminate the crowding and allow for the needed renovations, which in December of 2011 probably didn't seem possible at the time, but that is what we believe. So with your blessing, we move forward with trying to implement the 10 strategies that we had identified. We started by building what we consider to be an infrastructure for the criminal justice system. We implemented a software system that integrates with the jail population system that's available on the courts network and the county's network, that allows anyone at any time to very easily look and see how many people are in the jail, what are they there for, how long have they been there. I ask a lot of questions and identify people so that they can be processed more quickly. A lot of the challenges were that people really in the system, the courts, prosecutor, public defender's office, it wasn't very easy for them to identify people in the jail that needed to be processed. And so the jail software system was really a big part of the infrastructure and making that information readily available to all the stakeholders. I served as the jail population manager for last year, and we engaged the jail population committee, which was made up of representatives from the courts, the prosecutor's office, the public defender's office, the jail, some law enforcement, and probation, and people came together and we met twice a month, once a month, and then sort of we staggered to talk about how we could make the system more efficient and utilize the information that's in the jail software system to target people to reduce the length of stay. So we built this infrastructure and people began meeting, and our primary target was reducing the backlog in the Superior Court. Most of the people in the jail, a majority by far, about 70% were pretrial, pending some type of case disposition, and most were pending in Superior Court. So that was our target, was the backlog in Superior Court. And I'm just giving some examples of the things that the committee did to reduce the length of stay. They used a recall judge, which is sort of a retired judge that comes back to handle special docketing for backlog cases. So they identified the cases that really needed activity, and the recall judge was assigned to handle those sort of long-staying inmate cases. They modified the trial schedule to be more efficient. They calculated how many trials they could schedule to ensure that the court's time was utilized fully, and there wasn't a lot of downtime. They did priority scheduling for in-custody inmates. They could now know who's in jail versus who's not in jail. Anytime they had an opportunity to schedule an in-jail case, they would do that. They had a committee to proactively manage long-staying inmates. Long-staying inmates are inmates who have been there for a year or more, and that was an initiative between the court, the public defender's office, and the prosecutor's office. We increased attorney-client access. One of the challenges to good case early resolution was the ability for the public defender to identify their people, where they are, and to have access to them. And so the jail has expanded attorney-client visitation hours when they need to, and now the public defender's office every morning goes on the software system to see who's come in, so that they can go and meet with them and represent them right from the first day, instead of there being a delay and then a follow-up hearing. So that really saved a lot of time. The court reduced the time between a plea and a conviction and sentencing for in-custody offenders, just making those people a priority when they're scheduling because they're in custody. So again, this is just kind of a list of all the different ways that we were trying to reduce the backlog and reduce the length of stay for Superior Court cases. They held status conferences. The court held status conferences for cases that hadn't been indicted or moved in certain period of times, and we were able to use the software system to say, okay, who's been in custody, who hasn't been indicted for 60 days, and it would give us a list. And then the court could begin to work that list to call everyone together to find out why that case wasn't moving. We identified lists. We can now run a list and say, tell us everyone who's in the jail on a bond of $5,000 or less, or who's being held for lower seriousness offenses, so that the prosecutor and the public defender, they can have bail motions or call the case for an early resolution. The judges and the prosecutors reinforced appropriate utilization of summons versus warrants. The prosecutor's office was really terrific in meeting with the police departments and talking about when it's appropriate to issue a summons for certain types of offenses versus warrants, which really is helpful to the booking process of the jail. And the court really went back to a lot of the things that they had done in prior years that was helpful, that I think they lost some, track of, if you will, making sure that they're monitoring how many continuances they give for cases, when they set a trial date, enforcing that really is going to be the trial date, just mechanisms to reduce unnecessary delay, essentially is what those are. We were now able to identify inmates who have INS holds. That's important because a person can come in on a very low level case or have a very small bail amount, but they won't secure their release because they have an INS detainer. So you can hold a person for 30, 60, 90 days unnecessarily, where if we know you can bring that case to the attention, it can be resolved very quickly, and then the person can be picked up by INS. And some policies need to be clarified regarding bail sources, which is just a time-consuming procedure, and there was some misunderstanding about when they're needed. So the details of these are challenging, I understand, but it's really about the system coming together and knowing who's in the jail and when things are slowing down, and really being able to communicate with one another about the best way to eliminate much of this backlog and reduce the length of stay. And so we would get together and talk pretty extensively, but the software and the participation of the jail really empowered them to identify people who had been in the jail for a year or more, who hadn't been indicted, or who had low bail amounts. It was really the jail's ability to develop the software and provide that information that allowed the stakeholders to take the action that they did. I think what's hard for people to understand, and I'm going to show you the results in a minute, but this had nothing to do with alternatives to detention. We didn't release anyone before their time. We didn't put anyone under supervision or a bracelet or an alternative. It really was moving people through the system more efficiently and really more effectively. It was just a timing issue, reducing unnecessary delays. The results of that, this chart, I just want to show you really that in 2011 and 2012, the number of people coming into the jail was almost identical. In fact, but even though the number of people coming into the jail was almost identical, the jail population has decreased. So in 2011, it was 1,017. In 2012, it was 898. And so far this year, it's 827. And so the reason for that is simply the length of stay. It was the system's ability to come together and reduce these unnecessary delays and reduce the length of stay. In the example I gave in December of 2011, I said if we could reduce that length of stay to 46 days, we could get to 853. Well, the system actually exceeded what I thought was possible. The length of stay is now 43 days, and the average daily population is 827. Today, as of this morning, it's 829. It's 722 people in the jail, and then you have some folks in Hudson County and some folks in the CDC facility and state hospital and local hospitals. So it was really the same number of people coming in, just being processed more efficiently, reduced the jail population ultimately by 19%. There was about 200 fewer inmates in the jail on any given day because of the case processing. And that's really the summary slide, that when we look at when we started, November 2011, where we are now, the population is down by 19%, which I think has really been helpful with the renovations that needed to be done and the facilities no longer crowded.
It also gave us a leverage point to renegotiate our medical contract, which we put before you for a resolution earlier this year, which was reduced by approximately $400,000 medical contract alone, as well as the operational the operational benefits of having less people to provide care, custody, and control over, less people to feed, less people to service from a medical perspective. It's just made the jail a little bit easier to run. Not easy, easier.
Thank you. Questions?
I don't have a question. I have a statement I want to make. As a practicing attorney in this county who has practiced in criminal courts here, I think it's just amazing what gathering some information together and using it to change the way the system works. It's just amazing, and I compliment you greatly. If I had been here at the beginning, I probably would have said it can't be done. So that's
Thank you. Real Sullivan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to second Freeland Bergen for I find it remarkable that really your process is really just kind of talking to people, getting everybody on the same page, and getting them to understand what the implications are on the jail because of just these delays that when there's so many pieces to the puzzle as an inmate has to be processed through, there's so many points where delays impact, and kind of almost the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing in terms of those things, so that when you bring all these folks together and they talk about it, everybody wants to achieve, wants to process these people as quickly as possible. But they get a little disconnected from each other, and you see the delays. So I think it's, I was saying to Freeland, we didn't really spend a lot of money here. This wasn't $1 million or a couple $1 million. It was, relatively small dollars to achieve, a great result. So I just want to congratulate you all. I guess my only other question is there anything else that we can do? Are there pieces, that are more successful or less successful, or that would need our assistance, or there needs to be dollars spent somewhere that can be of benefit?
Well, I think it's just worth specifying that we achieved these reductions in population while we were dealing with, I believe, I don't think I'm talking out of school, we had the highest judicial vacancy rate in the state while we achieved these population reductions. Why we got these population reductions, we were able to grease the wheels of the existing criminal justice system with an extreme lack of judges. So I guess to parlay that into an answer to your question, now we have been recently notified that there are some judicial appointments coming to Union County, which is good news. Just more men and women in robes is going to help us to maintain or maybe better the population reductions that we've already experienced. But Maria's already spoken to me about maybe whispering in the court case manager's ear and or Judge Cassidy's ear at the appropriate time that our analysis says that if you commit one of the new operatives specifically to criminal court, it will be very helpful and beneficial towards maybe moving the machine a little bit quicker than it's moving right now. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think, this court has been missing literally 1/3 of their resources. And so one additional judge to criminal would be extraordinarily beneficial and absolutely could continue to impact the reduction, because judicial court calendar time is still a big barrier. Even if we can get everything ready, if there's, if a judge is 4 months out before we can set it, there's delays. So I think if we can convince them that assigning one of those, I think 8 to criminal would be beneficial. And then I think the other thing is that right now things are going very well, I think, on their own. I do check your population every day. We still identify folks that need to be expedited, but there's a good infrastructure in place. One thing I would say is that I think next month I'll discontinue doing that for all of you, and there has to be someone who takes on that responsibility here. And so I don't know how you accomplish that, but that's the one piece.
That was going to just be my follow-up. you know, as your contract ends and you've done a remarkable work here, and you give everybody the blueprint as to be successful, I guess it's more to Brian, but everybody else who's part of this, in the courts and everything else like that. So I would say, I would hope there is a plan just to maintain these things, whether you meet on the regular, you know, how you keep the momentum going, you know, in order to keep the numbers where they are.
Marie has been serving as our primary population manager, and her and I have discussed, and I'm working actively with Matt Dorado to identify a future population manager to come on board and assume the roles that Marie has been performing, whether it's the statistical analysis on a daily basis, the continuation of those committee meetings, the continuation of that dialogue. You know, believe me, we're not looking to abandon the practices that we are very proud to stand up here and show how well they work. We know that if we do that, it's just irresponsible. It doesn't make any sense towards what we've accomplished so far. So her and I are working on a plan to, when the person is identified, to assume that role, to transition that person adequately so that, you know, they'll be able to pick the torch up and continue running with it. And Marie has assured me that she'll be around to help us out in that endeavor, as long as it takes us to get somebody on board for that position. She's with us until, I believe, the end of April. And we'll take it from there.
Again, I'm best of luck and congratulations on a really remarkable achievement. As some of us who've been around a long time, we would say you never thought it was possible. I mean, in various attempts to do various things over the years, nothing really succeeded for any length of time. So, thanks and congratulations.
Thank you.
I want to thank you also.